The humanities are a practice, not an institution, a most immodest proposal. In the year 70 AD, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai foresaw that Jerusalem and the Second Temple would soon be destroyed by the Romans. Now, at that time, the core of Jewish religion was animal sacrifice carried out in that temple by the Kohanim, the high priests, which is to say, it was a religion bound to this place and bound to this very specific physical practice. And so, when the temple went up in flames, Rabbi Yochanan saw that the survival of the entire Jewish religion depended on its ability to decouple itself from a fallen institution that could no longer be home and transform itself into something new, something that could travel and something that could adapt to a wide and new and unforeseeable variety of circumstances. His solution: replace ritual sacrifice with prayer and the interpretation of scripture. And his famous request to the soon-to-be Emperor Vespasian was, "Give me the desert city of Yavna and its sages." Vespasian agreed, and Yochanan joined the early rabbinical school that was already already underway in the city of Yavna. And he went and worked with the sages there to build up a school. And this is how rabbinic Judaism as we know it today, was born almost 2,000 years ago out of crisis. So maybe it's already clear where I'm going with this. We don't have just one temple. It is not literally crumbling. In fact, for some, it remains a very comfy place to be, as Thomas pointed out. But the point is that for us humanists, universities are becoming increasingly adverse and inhospitable places to do what we do, to practice and to teach the humanities. And we're not in a position to reverse this trend anytime soon. So this, I would like to suggest, is our Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai moment. Can we take what we do and can we carry it with us to safer ground? Can we adapt to our changing circumstances? So, in my view, the most fundamental problem, which all of our other problems come from, the cause of the dropping humanities enrollments, the loss of administrative support, departmental contractions, the ballooning so-called adjunct disaster. In my view, the root of what allows all of this to go wrong is that people really don't understand what we do. And by people, I mean people outside of universities, I mean parents, I mean employers, I mean recruiters, I mean high school guidance counselors, university administrators, and even, I feel, some of our own practitioners. So this gap in understanding, I think, is such a serious problem because it means that we academic humanists are failing to extend what we do, the actual gift of what we do, the real gift, to the wider world. And in a sense, we are limiting the actual human value of what we do by doing it in a cloistered fashion. And meanwhile, we are justly infamous for a lot of things that are both not essential and in fact very bad for what we do as humanists. Namely, being cut off from reality, being deliberately obscure, being absent-minded, being, quote, book smart instead of street smart, as if one were always one or the other and everybody was both, and no one was both and nobody was neither. We are called masturbatory, we are called cowardly, and even friends of mine seem to think that we're in here to hide from the real world. And sadly, there frequently is more than a grain of truth in this. So in order, I think, for us to break out of the defensive stance that we have trapped ourselves in by too often earning this reputation, we're going to have to honestly unearn it. So how do we at once engage our students, our peers, the extra academic world, and the full capacity of our own intellects? It's a big question, but I will answer as briefly as I can by saying that what has worked pretty magically in my short years of teaching at Princeton and in prison is the attitude described, for example, in Bell Hooks' teaching to transgress. So if I had to summarize the attitude of this work in a sentence, and here I'm kind of using Bell Hooks for shorthand a bit since there isn't time to talk about what a liberatory pedagogy would really look like. Fortunately, she did a pretty damn good job in 1994. So if I had to summarize in a sentence, I'd say the Hooksian attitude is that all educators have a duty to undertake the lifelong work of self-actualizing and of healing oneself because educators are healers. Now, this does not mean that class is group therapy. It means that classrooms treat both students and instructors as whole people, entire people, not disembodied abstractions who are expected to think and behave as such, whatever that might look like. The general outlook of Hooks's essays, again, not new, 1994, are standard practice in many community-centered educational settings, but not at places like Princeton, where I currently study and teach. And in being forced out of our strongholds in these universities, we have a chance to put into practice philosophies like Hooks that are, in my view, demonstrably the way forward, but emphatically not the way of the modern corporate university. So given the extreme difficulty of getting tenure-track jobs in the humanities and making institutional and cultural change within universities, I came up with a desperate idea, an insane dream of a way forward, one that includes those of us who will be driven from the universities in spite of our worth as teachers and scholars, and those who already have been, and also those who will find a place for themselves inside of universities. Imagine a school. Call it the School for the Humanities, where 4 indicates something purposive, a mission. The students are college undergrads, and if possible, also high school seniors, recent college grads, and early-term grad students. Precocious students of all backgrounds who would gather in small classes, at least for starters, to undertake challenging upper-level coursework conducted in the spirit described in Bell Hooks's essays, and again, I'm using this as shorthand. Our students' STEM-oriented peers have plenty of opportunities to distinguish themselves and challenge themselves at a very high level. There are even programs that explicitly reach out to disadvantaged, underprivileged, and marginalized students, such as Andover's MS Squared program. And then, of course, there's the American Math Competition and the AIME, which are these, math tests that some of us in this room probably even took. I did so badly on the AMC. But of course, there was nothing that I could take as a humanities student that would give me the same opportunities that gifted STEM kids had. So this is an opportunity for us to extend to young humanists the opportunities to develop their intellectual and moral gifts, because the humanities need young practitioners, and young humanists need opportunities to grow and be stimulated. So how would this hypothetical School for the Humanities work? We could serve as a highly trained, hopefully unionized group of, if necessary, adjuncts who work with colleges and high schools to provide high-level humanities opportunities for their precocious humanities students. We might run our own classes, seminars, and teacher trainings. We would train students in research methods and enlist their help with our research and encourage their own early undertakings. We would author and co-author articles, guest edit journals, and the opportunity here is that diversity in the actual rather than cynical and superficial sense and representational justice would underpin all of our operations, especially the recruitment of our students and teachers. We would act on the idea that while opening up the so-called canon is very important, equally so is learning to teach all texts with courage, empathy, wisdom, and insight. Now, my personal view is that finding new ways to teach canonical works is just as imperative and just as restorative as teaching formerly sidelined material. We can talk about that during Q&A, but one of my favorite classes I've ever taught was on Thomas Mann, who is a very, very compromised individual. And one of the things we can learn to do is teach our dead whites in a way that is liberatory, honest about what they really were. And we can talk about how that went for me, but I truly believe that there's life in this approach. So for this reason, a School for the Humanities education would emphasize bravery and wisdom at least as much as, quote, intelligence or talent. and would reward collaborative projects just as much as individual ones, which, as we know, is not the way of things in the way that we live and work right now. So in order to fund our operations, we might peddle trainings in our methods, quote unquote, diversity and inclusiveness, a vile phrase if ever there was, combined with innovative humanities practices. We could do trainings for schools, universities, companies. There's unquestionably a market of people who would pay us to hypothetically help them solve their PR problems. Whether or not they would actually be able to implement what we tell us does not change my belief that they would pay us to do this work. Probably a lot. Also, if we were to work with high school students, we could get money from the DOE. Funding obviously would be very challenging, but I feel that we have to try, and there's a lot of things we could try, and some of them might work. So what I've been saying is that being squeezed out of universities offers an unsought but timely opportunity to reclaim what is truly most vital and human about the humanities, and to free ourselves from institutionally entrenched unwisdom. Ultimately, my real wish would be to see universities heal and prosper to the point where humanists can safely return. And it's worth remembering that Yochanan ben Zakkai did not want the temple to fall. He grieved and tore his clothes and his hair when the temple fell, as did all of the scholars and all the sages. But if we could create a landscape of alternative academies, as in not alternatives to academia, alternative academies, we could exert a corrective counter-influence on the same universities that are currently unable to provide for humanities departments. So just to wrap up, I want to clarify that this is not a call for separatism. This is a statement of hope that humanists who are being forced out of universities could actually help those who join the ranks of faculty to keep pace with communities outside of universities and to nurture the communities inside of universities. So, far from separatism, I'm advocating a sort of dialectical Prometheanism. It is time to steal fire from the gods so that we can build up that fire and rekindle the vanishing light of Olympus, if I may. We might be able to pressure and or help universities to embrace the liberatory pedagogies and practices that are already commonplace elsewhere. To put it in Archimedean terms and to finish, the way it seems to me is that our first order of business should be to build a place to stand. Because if we can do that, any old thing can be a lever. Thanks.